Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale as well as the latest episode of Happy. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time to start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Riverdale, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Happy. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Riverdale. A lot of interesting things to break down about this episode. Okay, so let's start off with Archie's situations. Basically, because of the whole Randy situation, because obviously Archie's feeling a little guilty. It doesn't help that you literally have Elio being like, oh no, it's your fault. No matter what happened with him, it's like, you literally killed him in the ring. His blood is on your hands. You better, get a good lawyer. He's, putting everything out there like, oh yeah, these drugs that were found on Archie, it turns out he's the one that supplied Randy with the drugs. This is all on him. Even having the point of like Randy's family is turning against Archie and blaming him for what happened because they've got, Elio whispering in their ears because this is his way of kind of covering himself. It's so interesting because at the beginning maybe you had like your thoughts of like, oh, maybe Elio's not that bad, but it's like every time that dude shows up, he is more and more of a piece of shit each and every time. And it's so sad that he's trying to like drag Archie down. Even at one point later on, even after everything going down, I was like, hey, here's your winnings for the fight. You should come join me on the road. You should be my Riverdale Reaper. It's like you're literally smearing his name, because it's on top of all this, Archie is the way he is. Archie has a hard time, like he holds himself to a very high standard, and if he falters even the slightest, he always takes it out on himself. You can make the argument he's very self-destructive in that matter because he will tear himself down more than anyone else could. His guilt. Because in this situation, he feels guilty when it wasn't even his fault. But for him, it's like, I knew Randy was juicing, but I chose to continue the fight. If I had called off the fight, I just didn't want to, take that loss. But if I had called off the fight, maybe he'd still be alive. Even at one point saying like, I wish it was me that was dead instead of him. And even Elio was like, oh, you're not the only one who feels that way. Kind of basically reflecting how the siblings felt about the whole situation. But Archie threatens Elio and gets the earnings from him. Is basically like, because Elio wants to act all tough, because he's like, oh, it's a 3 against 1 and stuff like that. But the moment like Elio was alone, he cowered up when Archie was like, give me that money. Because it's like, Elio won't even let them get the insurance money they're owed for this situation. Just because he's trying to loophole his way out of things. It's like, this whole situation would be different if Randy had won the fight and stuff like that. It's just because he wanted to get Archie back because Archie almost beat Randy last time, and it was like, no, like Archie said no to me, and the fact of the matter is he continues to be a thorn in my side. I want him taken down. So combined with the money he was getting from that, plus a charity event that was put on, by Veronica, they were able to raise money to take care of his family, and it seems like I think that's going to be something that they continue to do going forward too, and Archie trying to make up for everything, even suggesting that he's not going to box anymore because it's like I killed someone. It's just that regret just lays heavy on his heart. And then you combine that with all the fact is that you have it's Hiram backing Elio, which I didn't see that coming, but I shouldn't be too surprised. The fact is Elio is so vindictive towards Archie, you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense that Hiram would be backing his play. Because it turns out Hiram's not stupid. It's like, oh yeah, Archie saved my life. Sure, but he was there to kill me too. So I wonder, was he actually conscious during that moment? Or did he find out about it later on? How did he know? Because Veronica still doesn't know about, like, oh, Archie was there to kill her dad. Maybe he plans on using that later on because it's like, yeah, Archie, because for him it's like, oh, I've seen Archie's dark side. The fact is that he's got murder in his heart. The fact is he was threatening to hurt you. The fact is that he was actually there to straight up kill me. It's like, that's the true Archie, and it seems like he's going to try and get that Archie to come out to the surface. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to try and use that to kind of destroy the bond between Veronica and Archie. That even though they're broken up, she still cares so much about him. The fact is that Veronica's still in his corner, and I think Hiram's going to do whatever he can to destroy that relationship just to kind of leave Archie kind of further alone. I legitimately was curious whether that truce that he had with Archie would really last, considering the bad blood between them. I was like, oh, I guess, well, what Hiram doesn't know can't hurt him. Turns out the fact is I wonder, has he known the entire time, or is it just now? I mean, to be fair, who knows how long he's been, supporting Elio financially. So then it becomes a whole question of like, maybe he's done this ever since he got better. Like, because obviously he can't rely on a lot of people around him, because obviously everything between him and Hermione, it's like he's kind of on his own, so he's got to kind of rebuild his forces and his trust, put a circle around himself that he can trust. So, and I think that's ultimately going to be his downfall. The fact is that he will literally, when it's all said and done, have no one on his side. Veronica probably won't be on his side. Veronica's kind of on his side now with everything, but it's going to be interesting to see where that all goes. Especially because for Veronica, it's like she's still backing, Archie, kind of convincing him to get back in the ring, because it's like, this is good for you. It's like, you aren't the Riverdale Reaper. If anything, you're its Red Hope. And I thought that was kind of nice. Obviously, that's all happening on the cusp of, like, Josie leaving town with her dad, going on tour. It's kind of sad, because obviously we know that Josie has a very complicated relationship with her dad, of always trying to impress him. But it seems like she kind of has a high standard to live up to. But I think maybe it's because... Maybe you can make the argument him being kind of a dick sometimes is just his way of protecting her. What I mean by that is the fact is that maybe, because he ends up bringing it up in this episode, like the whole aspect of like the whole tough life of being a musician on the road and stuff like that. You have to be away for so long and stuff like that. And also, if you have to be like 100% dedicated to kind of get up on stage. It's not like the easiest life to live as a musician. You kind of have to give it or your all. And if you're not 100% passionate about it, like that will kind of show and come through. So obviously Josie's dealing with everything in Riverdale, but for her it's like she's ready to leave Riverdale, because she feels like this isn't where I really need to be. And the moment she was like, she's 100% sure, I'm like, that means she's breaking things off of Archie, because it's like, for her, it's like, she's got to find her place. For Archie, it's like, your place is here in Riverdale. She's like, mine is out there. Maybe it's somewhere in New York and stuff like that, but it is kind of sad just considering everything that's happened between her and Archie. But she's like, I've enjoyed our time, but obviously we're not in game. He's like, yeah, this kind of sucked, because, I was going to ask you to prom, and she's like, I forgot what her exact words were. It's like, he's always cute with his words or something like that. It's kind of a shame that things had just gotten started between them. But I guess you could almost say you kind of saw this coming, because that's kind of why things played out the way they did with Sweet Pea and her, because obviously Sweet Pea wanted more, but obviously that's Josie's whole thing. It was like she was searching for like her place in this world, and it's like, whether she'll come back to Riverdale. She says like maybe she will, but I mean, who knows if she actually will or not. I'm assuming she will at some point in time. Hopefully, like, things will have worked out for her. I'm curious, will we ever see her and the Pussycats kind of back together again? Because obviously they had the very strenuous relationship that they've had, so... I even love her telling her dad, like, obviously I'll talk about it, but with the robbery at Pops, like, she's like, see, this is why I need to get out of Riverdale. It's like, yeah, Riverdale is kind of a crazy place that things are literally happening all the time. Which I guess that the reason why Pops was prepared this time, is because, like, last time something happened inside of his restaurant, it was the Black Hood, and he was, like, not going to let something like that happen again. But I'll kind of get to that in a second, so... But getting to my point is, I'm curious to see, like, obviously, like... Archie and Veronica are, like I said, there was something there, but it's kind of not like a thing. Well, because I think even Josie kind of felt it, like, before, and I'd kind of commented on it. It's like, oh, that's going to be an interesting love triangle situation. It's like, no, it turns not be the case. It seems like it's almost like fate and destiny's kind of pushing Archie and Veronica together, so we'll see, especially if Hiram gets to have his way and what that exactly is he has planned out for Archie. So there's that side of things. Then there's the whole situation with Jellybean, which I thrown it out there last episode. I was like, do you think Gladys is the one behind all this, that there's something going on with this? It's like, nope, turns out not to be the case. Like, obviously, it's almost partially her fault to a certain extent, because of the whole Kurt's connection and stuff like that. You can even tell he was kind of making little nods here and there when he was referring to her as the alchemist and everything, so... Also, it's kind of interesting to see Gladys' dark side when she was beating the crap out of Kurt, trying to find out where Jellybean was. But they're forced to play the G&G to find their way through this, and because of it, she ends up having to spill the beans to FP about everything, which he's pissed because it's like, you brought this psychopath Kurtz into our life. and basically saying when it's all said and done, there's going to be a reckoning. And it's like, whoa, that's pretty harsh hearing that come from FP about this whole situation. Because, you know, obviously he takes it personally because it's like, well, for one, Jelly Bean's in danger, but also like he took a lot of the fault on himself, you know, to fix his family. And it's now it's like, here's Gladys kind of being the reason why stuff is kind of falling apart in a certain regard. It's actually something Jughead chews her up about, because it's like, this is our home. Like, after everything like that's going down, me and Dad, like, what are we supposed to do? And then you have Gladys suggesting they just run away and they go to a town that no one knows their name. But it's like, this is our home. Like, the fact of the matter is you came here and you ruined that. And I think, you know, Gladys had her own ambitions. Obviously, she wanted to do stuff here and there. But I think I'm starting to think that maybe on some level, getting her family back together was part of the reason. It wasn't the only reason, but I think it was part of the reason. And seeing the pain she's causing FP and Jughead, and seeing the position she put Jelly Bean in, you can see her kind of regretting her actions. Also, it turns out, like, another part of this whole thing was she had to fight Penny, because it turns out, hey, Penny's alive. The moment he was mentioning Cyclops, I was like, who the hell is that supposed to be? What's that supposed to be about? And it's like, oh, lo and behold, Penny is still alive. All Gladys did was cut out her eye, you know, one of her eyes, that's all. Which, that's like... The fight shows you that Gladys is not to be messed with, especially when it comes to her kids. Ended up kicking Penny's ass. I mean, granted, Penny kind of messed her up too, but before she could actually kill Penny, I wonder why Jughead wanted her to, I mean, especially all that the pain Penny is causing, but I guess it's like, Jughead doesn't want her death to, like, if something happened to her before, obviously that was all on Gladys, but this time he's in a position where I can stop you from doing that. Like, don't cross that line. You know, it's like, yeah, Penny's a bad person, but don't do that. And ended up just stabbing her in the leg, which shows that, hey, we're not done with Penny. She's going to pop up sooner or later. I'm going to be interested to see if we end up getting her involved in this situation. Obviously, she's connected to the whole G&G thing, because a lot of the ghoulies ended up becoming gargoyles. So I'm wondering, is that where she's going to try and take up a new position as like a lieutenant or something? I'm curious to see what ends up happening with that whole Penny situation. So there's that. Jughead has to be the one to kind of handle everything. He gets locked in the freezer because Kurtz is like, oh yeah, let's kill Jelly Bean now that Jughead's been locked up. And when he gets out, Kurtz is dead. I'm chalking that up to be like, I guess the Gargoyle King killed him. I mean, not unless that was, I mean, the Gargoyle King happens to be there, like, not unless it was, I mean, it was kind of pretty quickly, too, so I'm assuming it's because the Gargoyle King was like, no, like, you can't do this, because, like, the game was set up so that if Jughead succeeded, like, he walked away from this, but Kurtz kind of changed the rules, and I think the Gargoyle King is very explicit about things playing out the way they did. It's like, Jughead had won, and I guess Kurtz kind of broke the rules, and so he ended up dying because of it. We see Ricky running away when it's all said and done, because I guess maybe Ricky had gotten word from the Gargoyle King not to do that, or because like the moment he called, maybe Ricky had caught in contact with the Gargoyle King about that, or something. I'm curious, like, because the moment Jughead had called, like, Ricky took off running, so I'm wondering what that's all about. To me, I think this is interesting because I think that just proves how important Jughead might be to the Gargoyle King. To the point, it's like, I think he helped out Jughead, because I think this is all about pushing Jughead to be kind of his champion, almost in a certain extent. That could be me just completely wrong about it, but I almost get that feeling, because it's almost like he's impressed with Jughead, and just all these trials were meant to just show how strong he is, to kind of bring him into the fold, potentially, so... Luckily, Jelly Bean's okay, but when it's all said and done, Gladys is trying to run again, but Jughead's like, no, just face the music. No matter what ends up happening, we can face this together as a family. But for Gladys, she's like, I have to lay low for a while, but I'll make sure that Jelly Bean stays there. And no, honestly, I did not expect the story to kind of play out like that. Like, I thought, like, obviously things were going to get worse between Jughead and his mom, but when it's all said and done, like, I think when he sees, like, her earnest in all of this, like, I don't know, hopefully she doesn't go off and kind of do worse or terrible things, but obviously she's trying to lay low and everything until, like, obviously FP cools off, and I think, you know, she fixes a lot of stuff about herself before it, but she wants to eventually come back and make this whole family thing work, so... It's definitely going to be interesting to see what ends up going down with that, because like I said, I just wasn't expecting that. I thought, you know, it's interesting seeing, you know, because before you kind of saw a balance of like that you know, her being a good mother, but also that was kind of all undone by the fact is you can see that she was kind of a shady businesswoman doing some very terrible things in Riverdale. But now kind of seeing this side of her, it makes you go, oh, you know, you see once again that motherly side of her. So it's just going to be interesting to see what ends up happening about that. I'm also curious about Jelly Bean too. Like, that's still going to be like a readjustment, her living with them again. I think that's something they're going to have to get used to, because Jelly Bean's not the same little girl that they knew. I mean, so far it seems like there hasn't been any issues, but without Gladys there, Gladys might have been one kind of keeping Jelly Bean in check, and without her there, you know, kind of feeling like she got abandoned by their mom, you know, maybe that'll cause some issues. Maybe it won't. It'll be interesting to end up seeing what happens there. Then there's another side of things where you end up finding out, oh yes, some Betty situations that I find very fascinating. Well, for one, she ends up looking up stuff and end up finding out that Evelyn is not actually a regular high schooler, because apparently for the past 10 years she's been pretending to be a junior. I'm like, wow, that's some Orphan level shit. If you're ever seen the movie Orphan, I guess it's kind of spoiler saying that, but I mean the movie's like 10 years old, 9 to 10 years old at this point in time. It's kind of funny how that math works out like that. Nevertheless, essentially it kind of dealt with a similar circumstance like that, but it's kind of crazy to think like Evelyn is actually that old. And the even bigger twist is like, oh, she's actually Edgar's wife. It's like, jeez. All the while this is happening, you know, Betty's trying to, it's like, I can't save my mom, I can't save Cheryl, I can't save Polly, I can at least save the twins, because he's trying to adopt them the moment him and Alice get married. Obviously, she gets Penelope involved. Penelope was only able to get one of the siblings away, the boy, and in her, because in her mind it's like, oh, this is Jason Jr. I'm sure for her it's kind of like, they can have Cheryl, I don't care, but I got my little baby boy Jason back. In a certain extent, it's kind of like, oh, Jason Jr., even though that's not his name. And it was kind of interesting because what got her involved was because Betty being like, you know what it's like to be kind of forced into a family that wants to control you. And I was like, that was enough to kind of trigger her. I mean, we learned about that this season, about what pushed her whole situation with the Blossoms and everything. So there's that. But then it turns out, like, obviously Tony ends up being like, nope, she's part of this whole situation too. And it's like, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. It's like, there's no going deep undercover without being completely compromised by this. Because to be fair, it's like Edgar's able to give these people what they wanted. Like in Tony's case, she went from one family to another family trying to find a home, and now she finally has. I'm curious what this means for the Pretty Poisons, because like both Cheryl and Tony are part of the farm. Maybe if I looked around, I probably would have noticed that some of the Pretty Poisons are there. There were a whole bunch of other people, so I'm curious about that. But I'm wondering, are the Pretty Poisons a part of the farm yet? Or are they going to be in the future? I'm curious about that. But it turns out Alice already knows about, like, oh yeah, that's his wife. And it's like, but you're okay with his wife pretending to be his daughter, who's pretending to go to high school? Which it makes you wonder... I won't. It's not. Never mind. But it's just kind of interesting. It's like you're kind of okay with that, but I guess it's like when you're under a cult, you're not willing to see the truth. You're only willing to see your truth, what you believe in, what you accept. And it's like, oh, there's no lies here. And it's like, Betty, this is where you belong. And so he ended up bringing something up interesting. It's like, oh, look who's here. Your mom's here. Your sister's here. Your best friend is here. Your cousin's here. I'm like, slowly but surely, you've been gathering up everyone close to Betty. Not everyone. I mean, there's still some people he hasn't been able to get to. Archie, Jughead, nor Veronica. Maybe at the end of the day, he might be able to. But for now, like, I think those are ties that are still strong enough for her to kind of be able to pull away. But he hit core points. So part of me wonders, is like, was that the whole point? Is the point getting someone like... Do you think he's thinking of something twisted, like, oh, I'm going to make Betty my new bride or something like that? Like, is that the direction this might be heading? Because it seems like he's so fascinated in Betty for some reason, because she's so resilient. And I guess for him, it's like maybe he gets off on the whole power tripping thing of like, oh, if I can break her will and get her to be a part of this, then she's the last hurdle he needs to really cross, because she's the biggest thorn in his side when it comes to this whole situation, eventually kind of wrapping all of Riverdale up in everything that he's involved in. So I think that's kind of fascinating all on its own. So I wonder, was that kind of always the point, and that everyone around her that he's gathered up has all been like a little knock in that direction of getting her closer and closer? But then for Betty, she thinks about when she passed out for the first time. She saw like Polly and her mom throwing the twins into the fire and they're floating. Because I think for her, I think that's more of a metaphor. It's kind of like her fear of like, yeah, that might, obviously that's not going to happen, but what it triggers in her head is like, it shows you what dedication they have to this, that if she's not careful, the twins will suffer, so she can't like get caught up in this because she knows like the cult-like control he has over them. Even to the point like they're banging on a car trying to get to Betty, but she drives away. So there's that side of things. Then there's the whole aspect of everything of Hal. She got Hal transferred to the prison that Hiram owns, obviously bringing him a little closer to home. And once again, that whole situation took a huge 360 on not 360, geez, 180. The whole thing of like her being like, oh, she can't stand her dad, she wasn't going to visit him, and now she visits him a lot, even gets advice from him. Even the whole getting Penelope's help was his idea, but it turns out there was an accident, that there were no survivors during the prison transfer. So many things to be brought up. Was that something Edgar related? Is that supposed to be pushing her to be left alone? So is there that? Was it just a natural accident? Was this Hal's way of disappearing? Because this way he's able to break free and everyone assumes he's dead. Maybe he leaves enough of his DNA or maybe some teeth behind to make it seem like, oh, it was him that died in the crash or the accident. And it probably was like a fire or something. So like there's probably nothing but charred remains. So no real way of identifying. Might be that. Maybe it has something to do with the Gargoyle King. I'm kind of leaning more towards option 2. I'm kind of leaning my head to maybe there is a possibility of option 1, but I'm leaning more towards it's like, oh, it's his way of using this as an opportunity to get out. So we'll see. Which is going to be interesting considering the fact is having a serial killer on the loose, especially one who has his moral compass of like, oh, what's right and what's wrong, and obviously everything that's going on with his family, like trying to be this virtuous hero in a weird, twisted way. We could see him potentially going down that route. So it's going to be interesting to see where all that takes us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Happy. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break some things down. Obviously, you have Nick basically spending the entire day tripping. I'm guessing it's the thing that was inside of him. Like, obviously, it seemed, at least the way, Meredith kind of puts it, it seems like it straight up went down the drain, but I guess maybe it being inside of him was enough to kind of like cause him to get hallucinogenic. I guess like it has that type of effect on a human body, which maybe that has something to say about what's happening to Amanda, but we'll get to that soon enough. But the fact of the matter is the entire episode he's tripping and it's almost like his subconscious is coming at him. Like obviously at first he sees the 3 guys he killed last season at Ledique's card game. And so when it's all said and done, like they're telling Nick that, I guess because on it's like his subconscious being like, oh, do you feel bad about what you did? And he's like, no, if I had a chance, I'd kill you again. I was like, wait, does that mean he get to kill you guys again? But I think it is because there's a part of him that's like, he would change things if he could, because being the killer that he was back then, because obviously they're feeding into it of being like, oh, here's Sunny Shine. This is the person you want to go after. Because Sunny Shine's the one that did all this. He's the one that kind of was behind Haley getting kidnapped. And so there's that part of him that's the killer that's very good at what he does, that wants to just go after him and put a bullet in him. But he obviously doesn't want to do that because he wants to be a good dad. And I think when he looks at these 3 people, he does regret what he did, because it's just further proof of him sliding down this path of like being this person, not being the good dad he needs to be. Then he's obviously fantasizing about like all drugs and alcohol. He even has Amanda be like, oh, the fact of the matter is this whole dad thing doesn't fit you. Being the killer and everything that you are, that's it. Like you can pretend to do this whole dad thing for a while. All of it involves you being someone that you're not. And Haley wouldn't want that, but it's like, no, like, I got to be a good dad. I want to be a good dad for Haley. So that's what it's literally him kind of having like a subconscious crisis. Like the fact of the matter is his subconscious is trying to tell him something that he's not really clicking with. Then there's the whole thing with Happy, because Happy, and because it's showing like, oh, these are the people around you, like the effects that you're going to have on people. Like even Happy was kind of like, well, because Amanda's supposed to represent the fact is that something's off with Amanda, that he knows it, but his subconscious is trying to tell him, like, oh yeah, the way Amanda was acting in his head, like, oh, you knew something was off, like, I'm not quite right. And he's like, yeah, you've seen that same look that that look of an addict or something like that, because obviously like him and drugs and alcohol, it's like you see that kind of same look in Amanda's eyes. But with Happy, it's like Happy's just as jaded as he is, and it's like, oh, I guess I don't know Haley as well as I thought I did. And for him, it's like, the fact is, you should just leave her, Nick. And he's like, what? No. It's like, yeah, because all you're going to do is ruin her. The fact is, all you do is ruin everything you touch. It's also interesting, it's weird to see Happy in that design of like a giant horse. It looks so weird, but it's like, it looks fitting, but at the same time it looks super weird to see it like that. It's in that weird uncanny valley of like, yeah, you know, it's an imaginary frame, but it's still just kind of like, it's weird seeing him big like that. I guess because I'm so used to seeing him so tiny in scale and stuff like that. But nevertheless, all the while Nick is heading towards, you know, Sunshine Tower, and, you know, he's like, yeah, in his head, everyone's congratulating. It's like, oh, you got a present for Haley. It's like, you're the best around, no one's going to ever let you down. The reason why I'm not singing that is for obvious reasons, so I'm just saying the lyrics. I almost sang them, but no, I said them. Big distinction. But nevertheless, for him, it's like they're in front of Haley, and it's like, oh, I got the present, but then it's like, it wasn't that, and Haley picked up his gun, and she shoots him, because I guess it's like supposed to represent the fact is that Nick is turning Haley into him, like, the way he operates, the way he is going to eventually turn her into him, and he's kind of doomed his daughter to kind of become the mess that he is. And lo and behold, you know, obviously we cut back to what is the beginning of the episode with him hugging that, what I'm assuming at this point is the 100% a dead Wishy. I guess it didn't survive even under that cold weather. But Nick is cradling it and stuff. And part of me wonders, is there some part of that thing still inside of him that was driving him there? Was it just part of the delusions, or was it straight up because there's a part of it trying to get back to its body, like trying to find a new host? I wasn't really 100% sure what that is, but I mean, lo and behold, you do have Nick in Sunshine Towers, where you also have Meredith at, because like her and Doug, I love Doug being like, oh, you should go to a beach, get on your tan. He's like, I can work on my act, and she's like, if you don't stop, I'm gonna shoot you in your face. And he's like, got it. So they go to Sunny Towers to meet the new guy who's replacing the Wishy that ended up getting shot by Meredith last season. It turns out it's an actual guy. Obviously, he doesn't know everything that's going down, because for him, it's like, I've never actually seen the other Wishies take their head off. But what's interesting, though, is that they always follow Sunshine around. Like, they never leave him alone. It's always like a 24/7 thing. It's almost like they're... What was it, the wording he was kind of using, like... Because I was thinking, like, Sunshine took advantage, like, because my thinking is, like, obviously, like, the Wishies give him whatever he wants. That's what this whole thing is about. I'm thinking they feed off of him getting what he wants. I think that's something I brought up last episode, and I think that's why they latch onto him, because his needs and his wishes that constantly keep growing and growing, like, the more he succeeds, the more, I guess, they kind of feed off him. They're kind of like parasites in that regard, I believe, so... Maybe that it kind of explains everything that is going on with Nick in that same regard of why he's kind of tripping the way he is, because they're feeding off the dreams and wishes that he has of being a better father, and obviously like his subconscious is trying to fight it, like, because the creature might not be still in his system, maybe it is, but maybe it was in his system long enough to kind of mess up his head like that. So I even love the dude being like, oh, I'm trying to do this and do that, and it's like, if I had to, I even offered to blow Sunshine, and you have Meredith looking like, ew, gross, and she's like, you blew Sunshine? He's like, no, I offered. Because it's the whole thing of like, it got a little too real, because you hear the words of like, oh yeah, that's how you get around in this business. It's like, oh, that statement's a little too damn real, you know, with the current circumstances Hollywood's under, you know, so it's like, ugh. But what's interesting is seeing Meredith run, around in that suit. I'm curious, like, because Smoothie could smell that something wasn't quite right. I mean, to be fair, I guess he was around Meredith to know her scent. I mean, to be fair, it's a little different, because it's like it's a dude in there anyway, so it's not like it's one of those wishy things to begin with, but still, you can tell Smoothie kind of felt like something was off, though. Sadly, we do have Doug getting killed. I was like, oh, that's such a shame, because obviously, like, for him, it's like all this is what he wanted. This is what his life was. It meant so much to him, and he confronts Sunshine. It's like, oh, you got that tape, huh? He's like, the fact of the matter is, you picked me at the wrong time. The fact is, I'm stressed out about everything. Which, because normally Sonny doesn't handle stuff himself. Usually he gets someone else. Like, you would expect him to, like, send, like, Smoothie or somebody to kind of handle it. But he ended up bashing Doug's head in with his own hands. I don't know whether that's a thing of, like, oh, he had a little bit of superhuman strength, or was it just because he was holding the knife and just punching his face repeatedly. But you've never seen Sonny handle anything personally like that, which I think is kind of fascinating. So what's also interesting too is we saw the tapes he has. It's interesting too because I've read a few of the names. I paused it and saw some of the names. It's like you saw Jim Carrey's name. I think it was like Penelope Cruz, David Tennant, Taylor Swift. They're just like the celebrities. Even the Pope, people he's got blackmailed. So now that probably kind of makes more sense of why the Pope was so okay with him doing what he's doing. Is because, the Pope was getting blackmailed too, just like that dude from the dude who runs that network, the Cap guy, who once again his thing might be cannibalism, whatever the case may be. We did see that Meredith did get his tape, so that's interesting. So I'm curious to see what goes down on that front. You have Happy kind of being a little disparaged after everything's kind of going down. Him confronting that baby, which that baby had that whole run-in with Bo Peep, because apparently they went on a date, and she's like, it was one date, you stalker, and he's blowing all that smoke in Happy's face, and the whole thing ends with a imaginary friend brawl, which is interesting. You never thought you'd put those words together in a sentence like that. It's actually interesting because, like, obviously for Happy, it's like, well, Haley's grown up. She doesn't need him anymore. She's not the same girl he knew. And even though it hasn't been that much time, enough stuff is going down. Everything that went down kind of made her grow up, and she doesn't need Happy. And it's like, well, Nick's an adult. Even the fact is him being, like, the debaucherous human being that he is, that's not enough to pull Happy away. What makes Happy question everything is, like, does Nick even need me? It's like he's trying to find his purpose in all of this. And I'm curious to see what ends up happening with that. I think because obviously this season, a big part of this is obviously, like before, Happy was all about other people. With Nick, with Haley, it was all about rescuing Haley, and now it's like, it was all about rescuing Nick from himself. And you see Happy trying to do that this season, but I think in this season we're really going to see Happy, and I think that was something he learned from BB, was the whole thing of, like, live for yourself. And I think we're going to see him take those strides, and it's going to be interesting to see what that ends up looking like. Because at school, Haley's dealing with the whole situation of the girls. It turns out that little girl isn't dead. So yeah, I mean, she's got super messed up, which there's a part of me that's like, yes, she's an asshole, but at the same time, I guess because she is still a little girl, I'm like, I kind of still feel bad for her because she got super fucked up from those bleachers. But the girls that are kind of part of her clique are actually trying to be nice to Haley and everything. It's like, we're sorry for being dicks. Even being like, who's that guy from the zoo? And she's like, my boyfriend. And it's like, let's not forget the girls at that school, as the imaginary friends say, it's like, because of the internet and the bullies, all the girls kind of have to grow up quickly. So they were like, oh, that's cool. Just like, which is interesting that Haley immediately made that point of like, oh, he's my boyfriend. I guess it's to make herself seem cooler. And it seemed like everything is cool with them until it's like, oh, she gets a cape made of crap, and the girls are like, wait, didn't you get a real cake? It's like, I thought we were getting her a real one. It's like, yeah, we did. And it turns out, like, lo and behold, this whole situation was that Smoothie is trying to cause a wedge. He wants Haley to have no one to rely. Like, obviously he turned her against Nick to a certain extent, did the same thing towards Amanda, which I'll talk about that in a second. But also it's a situation of making her, trying to ostracize her so that the only person she can rely on is him. Obviously she's still dealing with the trauma. I mean, it's a combination of pushing her with all the trauma and PTSD from everything she went through last season, plus kind of leaving her alone and no one to talk to or rely on in all of this. And we see that it was him who ended up obviously taking the cake, and we see him kind of feeding it to birds at the end, so that's super sad and messed up. It makes you wonder, did he orchestrate everything else with the kids to get them laughing, or was it just kind of like he knew that one thing would set everything off? Which I'm curious to see what those other girls do. Will they try and befriend Haley? I mean, will she even listen to them now? No, because like she's probably still like, no, the only person I can rely on is my good friend Smoothie, so that's a sad situation to see. Obviously, everything going on with Amanda. She's slipping and falling bad to the point she forgot about Haley's birthday, and obviously that's pissing Haley off too, because like she had to kind of get up and kind of take care of herself to a certain extent, because her mom is just trying. And you know, Amanda ends up talking about it later on. She's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. She's trying to get high off of like cans so that she can like tap into whatever memories that she's trying to remember that she can't quite remember. Feel that hole in her heart with all this stuff of like eating a whole bunch of candy, everything with Simon, but it's not enough. She's just not quite sure what it is. And then it seems like she remembers it was her coming out of this like sluggish like material, like almost like being born from a cocoon almost. And there were all the wishes surrounding her, and then she's kind of confused, and then she kind of loses herself and it's like, I know exactly what I need to do. And we see her show up at Sunny Shine. My thought process is, were they making her, like, is she in the process of becoming a wishy? Were they always people until something happened that morphed them into what they are? Is that what's happening to Amanda? If they don't get to her soon enough, she'll be turned into a wishy and there'll be no turning back for her? Or what? Is that even a real Amanda? Is it some fake Amanda or something like that? I don't think so, but that's the whole thing I'm confused about. Like, what's up with all of that? Like, I'm kind of leaning more towards the whole thought of like, yeah, it's probably a thing of like they're making her into one of them, maybe. I don't know. Because once again, we still don't know what they are. I'm assuming they're kind of on that demon or rather monster level of like, you know, maybe they came to Sunny Shine and made him a deal of like, we'll give you everything you want, but we want something in return. What they're getting out of this, maybe they're getting Sunny Shine's soul at the end of this, but till then they have to protect him and make every wish he wants granted until he dies. Maybe that's the type of situation we're going on. Maybe that's why he's going as hard as he is about getting everything and becoming as big as he is, because he has to enjoy it while it lasts, because the moment he dies, maybe he goes to hell, they get his soul or whatever. I don't know. What part Amanda plays in all of this, like I said, I've thrown out my thoughts, but we'll have to wait and see in all of that. There's also the whole situation with Blue, because obviously Orcus is leading the prisoners, kind of being like a thing of like, you know, death is something that we both fear yet lust after, and that's something that unites us all no matter our background. So it seems like he's trying to build up an army of his own. Once again, for what purpose inside the prison, I don't know exactly, but we do see that Blue is still struggling to come out, and he's even asking because I was wondering, like, the way things kind of went down the last episode with him. I was like, was that him just kind of making his move? It seems like no. I guess him and Blue kind of having we're important to each other, because like when it was all said and done, you did see Blue kind of laying his head on someone. It's like, oh, you care about him type of situation. So was it like, I thought that just kind of came out of nowhere of like, oh yeah, you're gonna, and maybe they had never gone that far, and that was kind of the first steps in that regard before Orcus kind of stepped in and was like, oh yeah, like I'm in control now. Either way, Blue is asking him, it's like, I need you to kill me, because it's the only way to kind of give him a middle finger to Orcus, by making it so like, if I'm dead, he can't take advantage of the situation. It's like for me, I died the moment Mikey whispered into my ear. So that's definitely interesting. A little look in that direction. It's kind of interesting because like that whole Blue situation seems like it's kind of its own thing, because obviously the Sunny Shine thing is like the main thing, whereas the whole Blue thing is kind of a side thing. Which the fact is, it seems like that's going to be a type of thing of like, oh yeah, it's over here building up, because that might not be something that even gets dealt with 100% this season. It might be something that's kind of being built up, and then maybe at the very end of the season gets dealt with. Maybe potentially it's something for a future season, but for right now it seems like Sunny Shine's like the main focus. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us, like figuring all this out, like where this is all taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.